All right, let's kick off. Good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Wyatt Bruton. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions for Schwarzman Scholars, and I'm delighted that you all have joined us today for this webinar. Thanks so much for taking the time to spend with us, and we're very happy to have you join us to learn about what is one of the most unique opportunities for a postgraduate fellowship in the world. And we're extra lucky today to have the true experts on this program join us, who are some of our current scholars from this cohort of Schwarzman Scholars, and we're so happy they've taken the time in multiple time zones around the world to join us and share about the student experience at Schwarzman Scholars during this featured spotlight, the first installment of our featured spotlight series. Just a couple of reminders as we go through this webinar today. We'd love to hear your questions. We want to know what you're thinking about the program, what you'd like to hear from our current scholars. And so as you go throughout the session, if you have specific questions, you can use the Q&A box to ask those questions, and then we'll get to a certain point in the webinar today where we'll turn it back over to Q&A questions from our attendees. So we're looking forward to that. So please feel free to use that text box anytime. And I just want to welcome everyone on behalf of the entire admissions team. We're delighted you're here. We're in our outreach season of the selection cycle right now, and our application for the US Global cohort will open on April 15th, and the deadline will be on September 22nd. And our China application is currently open, and we'll close at the end of May with interviews in June. So wherever you are around the world, we're delighted to have you with us. And with that, I want to turn it over to our Associate Dean of Students, Melanie.
Great, thanks so much, Wyatt, and welcome everyone. Normally I live and work in the college in Beijing, which is that building behind Carlos right now. I'm calling in from my car. I'm back at home unexpectedly in Squamish, British Columbia, as a result of the current global situation. So we're so thrilled to be able to speak to you. All of us are in different locations, but I'm thrilled to bring 4 of our wonderful current students together to share some of their experience with you. You know, again, I get to know the students really well, given that I live in the college and we get to cook and talk and work out together. And I'm so excited that they'll be able to share a little bit more about what it's like to be a student in the program through talking about their experience. So I'll have each of them introduce themselves briefly to you before we get started. We can start with Sophie.
Thanks so much, Melanie. It's nice to see you in your car. I'm Sophie. I'm from Connecticut. I went to school in Connecticut as well. I'm calling you from Hong Kong today, where I am in this sort of interim period. I worked in the Middle East for 2 years. My background is in nonprofits and international development. And before that, I had worked in New York City. So Schwarzman is my first foray into China. I had studied Chinese before coming to the college, and I'm so excited that you're all so interested in joining Schwarzman. I have a lot to say, and you guys are really lucky that my fellow scholars and Wyatt and Melanie are here to help you sort of contextualize what could be one of the most exciting years of your life.
Thanks, Sophie. Qiang Ha at the bottom.
All right. Hi, everyone. Hello, Melanie. Hello, Wyatt. Thank you so much for participating in the session. I'm from China. I was educated in the UK for the last 6 years, and now I'm back home in my home country, and I'm very happy to see it with my fellow scholars, and I'm excited to share what the experience is like. My background is more in technology. I'm more interested in data science and machine learning. Thanks.
Wonderful, thank you. Good to see you. Joy, joining us from a beautiful location.
Yeah, I'm currently in St. Louis, Missouri, but I'm originally from the Bronx, New York. My parents are actually originally from Lagos, Nigeria, so born and raised and grew up there. Went to the Macaulay Honors College at Hunter College in New York City, and then also completed my public policy degree at Carnegie Mellon. And then following that, I became a senior risk analyst at Goldman Sachs, specializing in cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, fintech, all those kind of like different technology sectors. And so applied for Schwarzman because I was really interested in how China plays a role in all of those like fourth industrial revolution technologies. And like Sophie, it was my first time in Asia and first time in China, but it's been a tremendous experience thus far, even with what's going on with the pandemic. So very excited to see so many faces.
Okay, thanks, Joy. And finally, Carlos.
All right. Hello, everyone. So nice to see you guys this morning. My name is Carlos. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, but I've been living in Texas, and I went to school here for the past couple of years at the University of Texas in Dallas. And I'm super excited that y'all are here. My background is in foreign policy and nuclear non-proliferation. But this was my first time getting to live and learn in China. So it's been a really exciting and life-changing program. So I'm thrilled that you guys are here to learn a little bit more about it.
Great, thank you all. Again, thank you all for joining us. So what we've done is we've asked each of our wonderful panelists here to talk for a couple of minutes about some aspect of student life, the things that we get the most questions about from incoming students, and the things that we think are things that often aren't covered in the general webinars or sessions with the admissions crew that our students are the best situated to talk to you about. So we're going to start with Qiang. You can speak a little bit about what it's like to actually live in the college.
Yeah, sure. So living in the college is super nice. I very much enjoy it. I'll first talk about the college building itself. The building has 5 floors above the ground, 3 below the ground. So 2 to 5 are residential. For 1 is for administrative offices. So you have like dining hall, library, and these buildings. And the 3 floors below the grounds consist of classrooms, discussion rooms, and gym. There is a ping pong table in the 3rd floor below the ground, which I often play with friends. The bedrooms are very spacious. So all rooms are single and ensuite. Furniture is new, and there are loads of storage space. There are a few common rooms on each floor. So we often hang out in the common floor, watch movies, have a discussion, or just work together. The food is really I think for me personally, it's a good point about living in college also. The food is quite versatile and delicious. So for breakfast, you have both Chinese option and Western options. So there's things like soybean milk, Chinese baozi, or there are also bean sausages, so like more Western European style. And for lunch and dinner, most of the time it's Chinese food being served, but they are addressed more for the international flavor. There is a coffee machine in the dining hall, and milk, juice are both provided. And if you feel like trying something new, there are loads of options on Tsinghua, so many canteens and restaurants. If you feel like some authentic Chinese food experience or want to go to a Western style cafe, there are many options. And I would really recommend checking out the hot pot at Qingxin Canteen and the Chinese crepes at Zijin Canteen as well.
Great, thank you so much. You talked about the Tsinghua campus, and for everyone on the line, Schwarzman College is a master's degree college within Tsinghua University, which is one of the most prestigious, some might argue the most prestigious university in China. And Joy can talk a little bit about the Tsinghua campus itself.
Yeah, so the campus itself is quite large and very Western styled. I think it was a big shock to me to see that they have like a quad. But I think the main building in the quad is similar to the UVA campus. I think it was modeled after that campus. So it's really stunning, lots of trees, lots of fresh air, students riding their bikes, all over. It's kind of like a stampede of riding bikes. I should probably learn how to eventually. And so the campus is really, really large, and there's several resources. There's a convenience store, which we call Silo, right near the college, so you can pick up all of your essential needs for quite cheap. And every student is equipped with a Tsinghua student card, which Schwarzman loads with a certain amount of money. So in addition to your stipend, you also have this student card that allows you to buy anything on campus with that amount of funds. Speaking to some events at Tsinghua that was held broadly across the campus. Within the first few weeks, we had like a sports day, which was really cool because the college and all the other master's colleges or master's programs on campus participated. And we did like a giant like color run with like paint. It was just really messy. It was super fun. We also are part of several student organizations on campus, such as, like me personally, I've been really involved with the Africana Student Association on campus, which is really large and very much flourishing. So it's really exciting to be part of that community and that global community at that. And I think one thing that is quite memorable to me is when Schwarzman College, we participated in like the winter choir, and it was like a choir of about, I think like 50, 60, 70 of us all singing this song in both English and Chinese. And it was like my first time singing in a choir, and I don't think I'm that great of a singer, but it was in front of a lot of people and it was televised, I believe, and it was just really cool to not only have your community within Schwarzman, but to feel really integrated with the broader Tsinghua campus at large. So.
Great, thank you. I know a number of students over the years have participated in some of the other groups and clubs on campus as well, including the Tsinghua Symphony, the theater, the rock climbing, and the hiking clubs and things like that. I think Tsinghua has something like 300 different clubs and groups. They have the student body is about 50,000 students, and so on Clubs Day, when they have the festival with all of the clubs having a booth, I kind of lost track as I went from booth to booth to see the variety of things that they had. Thanks so much, Joy. You talked about the sports day, the track and field meet at the beginning of the year. That's one of the mottos of Tsinghua is no Tsinghua, or no sports, no Tsinghua. So Qiang's going to jump in again with a little bit more about sports in the college and in general.
Yeah, sure. So definitely, no sports, no Tsinghua. Like you can feel it the moment you're on campus. People are doing all sorts of sports everywhere, and even in winter time, you can see people running around, jogging, or playing badminton, etc. So there are many sports you can participate in, both in Tsinghua and in college. So within the college, on the second floor below ground, there is a gym with very state-of-the-art equipment. So the running machine, sailing machine, there is also a yoga room which you can exercise in. And also the ping pong table I mentioned, it's great fun to have a cross-national ping pong competition at times. And on the Tsinghua campus, there are a range of sport facilities. So there is a swimming pool just across the road. There are tennis courts, badminton courts, football courts, basketball courts, etc. And I'm in the basketball team. This year, Scotland College as a team played against other divisions within Tsinghua, and it was great fun to play with other Chinese teams. And I believe many scholars also this year share their expertise in sports. So many of my friends are willing to teach each other. So we learned boxing, Muay Thai from each other, and tennis as well. And some of them take part in school level, university level competitions like in Taekwondo, etc. So there are definitely many options, all the things you could possibly think about. And Melanie herself organizes a lot of very challenging gym workout sessions at times.
Great, thank you. Carlos participated in one of those yesterday virtually. We did a little CrossFit yesterday. I think everybody on this call has attended at least one CrossFit session with me. Well, let's see. Well, Carlos, you can jump in and talk a little bit about what it's like to live in Beijing, and then also what it's like to explore China during your time as a Schwarzman scholar.
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the most exciting parts is of being in Schwarzman College is that you're part of this community, really vibrant community in Beijing, and the opportunity to explore the city they're readily available. I was a big fan of the public transportation system here in Texas. There's not too many opportunities to hop on a subway and explore different parts of my city here in Dallas. So in Beijing, the public mobility is really accessible and affordable for students. There's 2 metro stations located close to campus. They're both within about a 20-minute walk. So it's from there, the city is at your disposal. And I found it a really interesting way to get to know the different neighborhoods in Beijing, and then also to even work on my Mandarin and be able to get better at navigating around the city. Before coming to Schwarzman, I had no experience with Mandarin at all. And so sometimes on my metro rides, I would just stand and look at the map and try to read it. And over time, I got more familiar with the city, more familiar with characters, and just getting better at understanding what it was like. And so it's a really exciting place to be. There's always something happening, and always different neighborhoods that have different vibes and different restaurants. So it's always a great experience. And another benefit of being at Schwarzman is that they have these immersive excursions that they lead. Sometimes they happen every week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, and they're called these deep dive excursions. And basically, one of the staff members at the college who's very knowledgeable about Chinese history and culture will take us on these journeys around the city, and we'll get to explore different historical contexts and topics as we're going and visiting different sites. So it's a phenomenal parallel to the academic experience that we're having as scholars, because sometimes the concepts that we talk about in class end up being explored and represented through one of these deep dive excursions. And they really take place all over Beijing. Usually we all gather in the forum and leave as a group. So then we also get to spend some more time building and sharing that community on the way to the place and on the way back. So that's been the most exciting part for me, is this aspect of community building and the fact that it can take place outside of our own college building, thanks to all the programming opportunities that there are in the city.
Great, thank you. I think if you'd like to continue on, Carlos, you can talk a bit about exploring China outside of Beijing as well, given that we've got these wonderful holiday periods for you to explore a little bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. So we get about week-long breaks in between our modules. And then one of the most impactful experiences for me was during about halfway through our first semester, we get to go on what's called a deep dive. And so it's about a week-long experience, an immersive experience in a different city in China. So as we go in smaller groups, so I was able to join a group of 12 scholars that visited a rural village in the southern part of China in Yunnan province. And for me, since my background is in international relations and foreign policy, I had always thought about China at a very high, kind of state level. And this idea of being able to explore the Chinese village as a frontier for policy innovation and implementation was something that was really exciting for me. And it was the first time I was able to really step foot in a kind of environment like that. And it was an incredible week-long homestay that we did with this family, and we got to follow them around, look at them, and discuss with them, the issues that they were facing in rural China. And it gave me this appreciation for this part of China that usually doesn't make it into the news, but is really important and a really big part of the domestic governance challenges that the country is looking at tackling. And so it just gave me this really vibrant appreciation for a different side of China. So that was something that was part of our experience. Different scholars got to go to different places, different cities, Shenzhen, Xi'an, different high-tech centers for Beijing. But for me, I found it really impactful to be able to visit a little smaller, more rural area and learn about those issues there.
Great, thank you. In fact, we'll go off script here and see if any of our other students want to share some favorite memory from some of the exploring China travel that they've done. A favorite experience from deep dive, or a location you went. Yeah, Joy.
So I elected to go to Chengdu, and on paper I said because, you know, it's a big like blossoming AI center, but it was really because it's like, from what I was told, like the food capital of China. And I was not disappointed. Literally some of the best food I've had in my entire life was there. They do also have like a really strong hip hop scene there, which is great for me. So I think just being able to get, as you know, the name suggests, a really deep dive into a whole entire city for a week with, you know, a smaller group of the class was just like one of the most memorable experiences.
Excellent, thank you. Sophie had her hand up too.
Hi, yes, going off of Joy, I applied to Xiamen, which is a beach city that's across the strait from Taiwan in the southeast, kind of on paper because it's a big center for BRI expansion, and because of my work in the Middle East, I was very interested, but also because it's a gorgeous beach town. And actually we did end up going to the beach, but I learned a lot about BRI as well in a way that I couldn't have even imagined. And it was incredible to also see that Xiamen was actually a bustling AI center. So we had one moment where we visited an AI research think tank, and we had a translator who was hired by Tsinghua, sort of top in her field, an incredible sort of interpreter who was interpreting for us. And at this AI center, they didn't have staff. They only had a robot guiding you around the entire company. And then the staff were like working remotely or working at another site. So we had a moment where a translator, a live, you know, expert translator, was translating for a robot that was leading us around. It was so surreal. It was as if, you know, and you're in this gorgeous place with all of this, you know, ocean and really kind people. And it totally turned upside down for me what I thought China would be like in the.
Great, thank you. Yes, so all kinds of travel, all kinds of stories come out from travel. Yes, Qiang. You need to unmute yourself.
All right, I would like to, I would like to share my experience going to Shenzhen on a deep dive. So although I'm from China, I haven't been to Shenzhen before, and it was a total surprise to me. One day, mostly for professional related things for AI, but also want to see what it is like. And the moment I stepped out of the airport, I was already amazed. So you can see your luggages going in the back end from the screen in the luggage section, and there is also a changing room within the airport just for business travels, and it was really convenient. And the city itself, I feel like, so I was in London the year before, and it feels like it's far richer than London. It's more metropolitan than London. I was totally surprised and really enjoyed learning about all the big AI companies like DJI, the drone companies in Shenzhen, and also traveling with friends. It was a totally amazing experience, and I learned a lot in this.
That's great, thank you. Yes, I was on that deep dive too, and that was a fantastic introduction to all of the innovation, you know, all of the companies that are innovating there. It was an amazing time. A couple of you have mentioned or said things about learning Chinese, learning Mandarin. So let's start with Sophie. Joy may want to chime in as well. A little bit about your experience of learning Chinese.
Sure. So I think learning Chinese is one of the most incredible sort of opportunities that you can take advantage of on Schwarzman. There's a lot of reasons why, but I think to sort of get your best start, it might help to have some foundation before you enter Schwarzman. So I was fortunate enough to do a language immersion program beforehand, which I would actually recommend as a small aside for anyone at the Middlebury Language School in Vermont. They have a great scholarship program, which which is a full tuition that you can look up beforehand if you have the time. I think it's going to probably be canceled this year, which is unfortunate because some of the scholars were planning to do it afterwards. But for sort of the sixth cohort, I think it would be an option. So that would really help, because I think in order to engage with China, you really need to have at least some Chinese, or at least show a lot of curiosity about learning about Chinese. And I think those are two very different things that people can sense. You know, if you really care about learning the language, if you ask questions, and if you're practicing the language, I think people notice. So I'll sort of tell part of my story with that. So when I came to Tsinghua, I had just come out of an immersion program. So I was speaking Chinese to everyone that I met, like my very bad Chinese, and just really trying to engage with my professors. I spoke to this woman for a long time before realizing she was our academic dean, Dean June, who, thank God, is such a kind woman who was listening to all of my grammar mistakes. But that really honestly started me off at the year, having a deep connection with some of the Chinese scholars, because they were kind of like, who is this girl who just wants to speak Chinese a lot? And, you know, that evolved into us speaking, you know, at certain times we would like have dinners where we'd speak Chinese or speak English, and just really try and trade off to get to know each other. And I think that that's just a great way to engage. The caliber of the Chinese language staff at Schwarzman is unbelievable. These people work really hard to make sure that you have the best curriculum possible, that you're in the best language level, and they're always available on WeChat if you have questions. I've messaged my teacher about, you know, if I'm in a restaurant and I'm not sure what the menu says, like it's really at that level. They're so willing to help. There's also an excellent Chinese club for international students at Tsinghua. So you just sort of join an online group and get reminders. And that's a great way to also meet international students, but also to meet Tsinghua students who are interested in exchanging in Chinese with foreigners, which is really fun. And also a great way to meet like folks from all around the world that come to Tsinghua and learn about their motivations for doing it, you know, outside of the Schwarzman program. And I think there's also a Chinese table at the dining hall, which is one of my favorite parts of being in Schwarzman, in the event that, you know, your friend can't make it for lunch, or there's like a conference that someone is going to, there's always Chinese table at every lunch and dinner, and breakfast as well. So I had a really close friend who was in a higher level Chinese course who helped me a lot, and we would usually get breakfast together and just talk, and then a couple of other folks would come over and it would evolve into a conversation. And I think being curious about the language and being interested in Chinese really helps you understand China, and shows sort of your community that you care deeply about getting to know China. And I think that that's a very important part of the program that Schwarzman does extremely well.
Great, thank you, Sophie. Joy, did you want to say a few words? Because I think Joy also was beginner level, but came in without any prior language learning. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm really jealous of Sophie that she was able to do that program, because she's being modest, but her Chinese coming in was really phenomenal. So I unfortunately, I unfortunately had to work up until like 2 days before I flew out to China. And so I didn't have the time to like start learning ahead of time. But fortunately the program provided this free, like online Chinese, like program. It's called Lingo Bus. I think it's proprietary. And we did that for 10 weeks. So I would just log on after work, do it live with the Chinese instructor for about 45 minutes, and did about like, I think it was like 20 sessions that gave me enough elementary Mandarin that when I stepped foot in Beijing, I didn't feel completely like a fish out of water. And just based on the structure of the first module, everyone is required to take Chinese it's an everyday class with homeworks and quizzes, and Carlos was actually in one of my classes. And so between that first module, you get enough Mandarin that you feel comfortable not only conversing with people at the college or on campus, but just going out to restaurants or going out to, you know, with your friends, and just feeling comfortable and not feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't converse with, a DD driver or like the equivalent of Uber, or, ordering food and all of those basic elementary things that you would need to kind of navigate around Beijing.
And Joy, I'll just jump in here really quick with a couple of questions have come in about Chinese language, and a couple of people asking, and tell us about your cohort. How many people in your cohort in the US Global international students had Chinese background coming in terms of having studied before, and how many have were coming in and haven't studied at all before besides Duolingo or Lingo Bus? And then how many, give us a sense of how many levels of Chinese are offered. So if you come in with an advanced level or a beginner level, are you able to kind of pick up where you left off?
Maybe I'll jump in with the stats for this year, because that was one of the questions we asked before they arrived, so that we could plan for classes, and then they can jump in and just talk about the levels. This year it was actually a 50-50 split. 50% of the incoming global cohort had never studied Chinese in any way before, and then 50% had. And then over to you guys, can maybe share a little bit about the levels or difference in level. I guess all three of you were beginner level.
Yeah. So I actually, they had there's a beginner and an intermediate, and then pre-advanced and advanced Chinese. So it's a total of 4 levels. And in the first level, they divide you into sort of A, B, and C. So A is like coming in with very little background, like no knowledge at all. And I think B is when you have the Lingo Bus, you have sort of a prerequisite a bit. And then C is kind of maybe you studied for a year a couple of years ago, but you've forgotten, and so it's sort of like that level of keeping you up. So they're really trying to make sure that they hit students when they come in at every possible level. And then I got placed into, so then there's a second year, which is like intermediate A and B. So that's in 2 levels. So I was placed in upper intermediate. They actually initially placed me in pre-advanced, so in third year Chinese, but I was like, this is too intense. So then I dropped down to the like upper intermediate. And so that was mostly students who'd studied for like 2 or 3 years, like had sort of a solid grasp, but weren't at like super advanced level. And then the third section, so 3A and 3B, were students who had studied in college, usually for 3 or more years, who had varying levels. And then there's also a fourth level. So the 4th year, it doesn't mean like 4th year Chinese necessarily. These were students who had either passed sort of HSK 6, which is kind of like the highest level of English language speaking, like native English speakers speaking Chinese, or they were sort of American born Chinese who didn't, who grew up speaking it, but maybe didn't grow up reading it or writing it. So that was just like, mostly reading articles and sort of high level text. And then there's another level that's for like fluent Chinese speakers who were, maybe from Singapore or like grew up in Asia using and writing Chinese, who just needed, some advanced support. And then on the Chinese side, so if you're a Chinese scholar and you come in trying to learn English as well, or sort of like having English as a second language, they offer an excellent array of English classes. So there are 2 English teachers as well, and that's required, I believe, for 1 semester as well for Chinese students to make sure that their, writing basically right is like up to academic standards. Yeah.
And for me, I was placed into one of the beginner classes since I was with Joy in one of those at the beginning. And I think I noticed the question about if it prevented engagement, if the language barrier prevented engagement with students outside of the college and in the broader Tsinghua campus. And I will say that the people in Tsinghua have been so welcoming to all of us, but the warmth that I felt once I joined the Tsinghua community was something that was really unique and really special. And I think students outside of Schwarzman in the broader Tsinghua campus are really open to engaging with us, even if it's just at the dining hall, at a club meeting. And so I think that barrier, folks are really understanding, and they can see that we're trying and we're doing our best to engage with the understanding that we have, and they're really warm and willing to let us to engage in friendships and whatnot.
Great, thank you for sharing on that piece. We get a lot of questions and a lot of fear sometimes from the people considering applying for the program or who get in that have zero language. So you can see how successful these folks were. Sophie, I'm so impressed that that your language level improved that much from the Middlebury program. That's amazing.
Yeah, Catherine Davis Fellowship for Peace, everybody. It's a free summer at Middlebury. You guys should look it up if you're looking into Schwarzman as well.
Excellent, thank you. Well, actually, we've got one more thing we wanted to talk about, and that's events in the college. Various events from the guest speakers to student-run events, and Sophie can talk a little bit about this.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to keep it short because I know we have a lot to get through, but there's a lot of different sort of tiers of events to be involved with. I think there's something so incredible about that culture because you can also, like, you get the chance to sort of see people come in who are experts in your field. So from my experience, we had people with Middle East background, we had people with really incredible China background. We had Kaiser Kuo of Sub China. We had Joseph Nye, one of the sort of foundational professors on China in the US. We had all sorts of those types of people, but we also had people that were way out of my wheelhouse. So the founder of Soho China, one of the biggest sort of real estate developments in China, she was there as well, who is this powerful Chinese female executive who I found to be so inspiring. So you get a chance to see the top in your field, but also be pushed out of your wheelhouse. There was also another crazy time where, Doug, who's the head of our events, messaged me and was like, hey, can you give a tour of Schwarzman to the treasurer of the World Bank? I was like, what? Like, Doug, it's Tuesday. Like, are you serious? Like, I was like, I need to like fix my hair or something. But it was really, that kind of stuff also happens at Schwarzman. So that's been really great. And then I've had the pleasure of collaborating with Joy, who's on this call, working a lot with and she can speak to it more as well, with the Schwarzman Women's Group, which she's really been leading. And this year we've co-developed a charter with a lot of our sort of solidifying the vision that we have for Schwarzman women each year and kind of what that role will include. And so that's been really great to host events through that and discussions and meetings with women in the cohort about like what our agendas are. And I also want to highlight the incredible work that the team has done on events even now. So as we're sort of disparate in Corona time, we have, Condoleezza Rice speaking in 2 weeks. We have Aaron Sorkin speaking right now at a different event, which is, conflicting with us, but will be recorded for us later. So the caliber of speakers are so incredible. And then what's also been so exciting is the cultural events that students are able to host from, to show us a bit of their background and their interests. So one of my favorite events was the Holi Festival that we had in, I think it was late November, early December. And it just ended up being us in the pub, like getting a bunch of Indian food, a lot of dancing, just really crazy dancing on a Sunday night. And it was just, so fun and very choreographed in the dancing, not for all of us, but I had a lot to learn. And so it just those sorts of celebrations. There was a great Hanukkah celebration as well, very diverse and very open to every scholar who wants to attend. So those have been some exciting highlights there.
Great, thank you, Sophie. Wyatt has messaged me and said lots of great questions coming in. So we'll move into some questions and answers. Wyatt, if you want to pose those.
Sounds great. Thanks, Melanie, and thanks everyone. So we've had a lot of different types of questions come in, and I'll start out with something that several people addressed, which is recognizing the incredible level of diversity in the program, people coming from around the world, people coming from a variety of professional backgrounds, a variety of intellectual backgrounds, and several people pointed out, really being really curious about how do you build community in a residential college, living with so many different people from around the world for this 1 year intensive experience. So I'd love to hear everyone reflect on that.
All right, I can start on that, and you guys can add on. So firstly, within the college, like the way the college is set up facilitates discussions. So as I mentioned, there are loads of common rooms where we just hang out, chat after classes and work. And on the floor of classrooms, there are also a lot of sofas where once you finish the classrooms, you can just step out and check further with the lecturer and among your friends about what's going on. And also among the scholars, we often go out together, and there's a lot of get to know each other sessions and community building sessions, etc. that keeps the community alive. And even now, there are some virtual meetups organized among different communities within the scholars to interact and make the community alive.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and add to that. So I think in terms of community, I think this is the first time where I felt like the people that I started this program with have transcended beyond, oh, these are my classmates and these are people that I live with, but rather these are a family. This is a group of people that I can consider family and I will know for the rest of my life. And I say that because you can imagine coming in, there are so many varying levels of, shared interests that people build friendships upon. So if it's not language, like, oh, I know, one of my classmates, Beta, because she is a brilliant German speaker. And I used to speak German a few years ago. So now I'm friends with her, and Lucas. And me and Sophie both love Gossip Girl. So me, Sophie, and Campbell all joined up together and had a Halloween group costume of Gossip Girl characters. And then I think of my friends Okpe and Dunola, and, all of us happen to be Nigerian women. And so we can talk about, how strict our parents are, and, me and Rami and Abdo and our love for Egyptian music. So you can imagine there's so many intersection points that we all share that build these friendships organically. So in terms of community, I wouldn't feel worried about coming in and maybe feeling a little different, because I think we all do a good job of being inclusive, and the events, especially some of the student events, and the building itself is a good facilitator of community building.
Yeah, I think the kind of diversity of the program is the biggest strength. And for me, the way I see that manifested, I know that like there's a lot of geographic diversity, but one of the most important or unique things about the program is that there's a huge variation in age as well. Some of the students that come in are 28 at the start of the program. They turn 29 during the course of their year. And then you have someone on the other end like me who came as a recent graduate. And so for me, it was really incredible to have and be able to build friendships with folks that weren't all in my immediate age range. And so I learned a lot from them, and we're able to share. We're at different parts and parts of our journey and different paths maybe on what we're going to do after the program ends. But during the time that we're together, we're able to really enjoy each other's company and learn from each other. And the program does a great job of facilitating that from the beginning. We had these small group discussions early on called Leading Lives. It was a workshop where within the first 2 weeks, we are able to really develop a shared vulnerability, which I hadn't experienced before or been comfortable really in a big group setting. One of my fears before coming into the program, on top of the Chinese language barrier, was how am I going to be able to be comfortable opening up to people who I don't know, and we're all going to be living together. How is that going to factor into things? But those first 2 weeks were so crucial and so wonderful in realizing that these people are here for the long run, and we're all here to share and learn from each other, and that kind of mutual respect I found to be really incredible.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. That's go ahead. You have anything to add, Sophie?
Yeah, just one last point.
Awesome.
Something I think that shows that spirit, and going off of what Carlos is saying of building it early on, and joy about having people come in from different intersection points to kind of the same thing, is our colleague Beta in the first week of Schwarzman she's a filmmaker, and she did a screening of a film that she was recently releasing, and we didn't, like, none of us really knew each other, but she like sent a text to like everybody in this college being like, hey, I'm showing my movie, like if anyone wants to come, like, and you know, you can come a little early to help set up. And I think almost the entire cohort came to support her, and we're really engaging with the film, like asking questions, giving her feedback. And this was day one, like this was week one, you know, we kept showing up to Beta's things for the rest of the you know, time that we were there. And so that's the kind of energy, that's the kind of spirit of how much people not just you know, learn from each other in this community, but really give to the community.
Awesome, thanks everyone, super helpful. And kind of switching gears slightly, several people mentioned something that I think always strikes me when I go to the college is just seeing how many opportunities there are to engage every single day. You know, in a day, there's so many events happening, so many opportunities to work together and get to know each other and build community that we just talked about. And we had a couple of questions about how do you manage your time and your priorities when you have so many different academic, cultural, personal, and professional opportunities. So a couple of you jump in and let us know.
I think I can just start off quickly. There's, it's definitely a challenge, I think, of the program. And it is, I've said this, you know, before, like you become almost a CEO of your own life all of a sudden, and you have almost equally as many priorities and things to manage, which is really exciting. I would recommend, so Melanie gave us these passion planners, which I'm a huge fan of, early on in the year to kind of, which she has with her, amazing. I unfortunately left mine in Beijing, and then I got one shipped to my family's home in Connecticut, and then I had to flee the virus, so it's sitting there waiting for me. But it's a great sort of like planning way to kind of think about your day, and to not just think about like, what activities do I want to get to, but kind of how do these activities fit into my larger goal and my larger vision. And a great piece of advice is just to hold on to whatever reason you have, you know, for coming to Schwarzman, and really make sure that that's present in all of the different, you know, activities that you do while you're there. You can perhaps, you know, obviously try something new and push yourself a little bit, but kind of try and stay as focused as you can on your own path. And yeah.
Awesome, that's super helpful. One of the follow-up question is related to, as you come in, you're obviously bringing a background in leadership. As you all know, demonstrated leadership is really the core of our selection process. So all of you are leaders of impact coming into the program. And so another question related to time management, are you able to maintain positions of leadership in organizations that you worked with before coming to Schwarzman Scholars while you're at the college?
Yeah, so definitely. So that question immediately, I think of Musab, who is our classmate and is on the school board for Jersey City and held the position throughout the school year, to the point there were even times where he'd be in a board meeting, but he'd be in class. And so he's on the phone saying "I" for his board meeting, but also sitting in class. So yeah, you totally have leeway to do that. If you have a business and you're able to do that concurrently with your studies, you can continue to run your business. There were a few initiatives that I was doing back in New York that I kept doing simply because I was just able to manage my time appropriately. So I don't think there's anything stopping you from continuing any obligations that you have, so long as you're able to complete your duties as a Schwarzman Scholar here in there in Beijing, but also commit to whatever obligations you need to from where you're coming from.
Awesome, thanks, Joy. Another great question, thinking about the role of China, right? Obviously, we know the mission of this program is to create this global network of leaders who throughout their careers will serve to build mutual understanding between China and the rest of the world. And I know that's a mission that we can all agree is more important now than ever. And so this is a really, really great question about how do you, as Schwarzman Scholars, as you prepare to finish your academic year, how do you see yourself incorporating China into your role as a future global leader? And has your role and perspective changed throughout the year on China?
I think for me, I learned a lot of historical context that I hadn't really appreciated about China. On the academic side, getting to spend a significant amount of time through we all take a certain core of classes, but there's also electives that we can take in terms of our degree plan. So I chose to take a couple of the China history courses. And I really enjoyed getting to understand a little bit more about, the countries and how it came to be. And getting that background has been super useful for helping me think about how do I see myself moving forward in an area where I'm obviously interested in foreign policy. How does China's trajectory fit into that? What does that mean for the global community, for the international order? And I think getting that historical background is key and is really useful. So I definitely appreciated that about the program. And
just quickly to add on to that, I know my friend in the cohort this year, she was a founder before, and now after learning more about China, she's a Brazilian. She wants to work in between as a bridge between the Brazilian government and Chinese government, so helping to develop business opportunities in Brazil, because she thinks like a lot of things could have been done, and she sees the booming of the industry within China and wants to take that back to her own home country.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone. Switching gears again, lots of great categories of questions coming in here. This is a little bit related to kind of how you balance your time on campus, but this is now about balancing the classroom experience with kind of the co-curricular, extracurricular experience. And what is, and adding on to that, kind of what does an average day look like at Schwarzman College?
I don't know that there's an average day, because I think every day is different, and every day there's so many opportunities to engage. What I will say is that the folks that have designed the curriculum understand the demands that are on our time, and they've left gaps for us to be able to explore things that aren't directly related to our academics. So for example, most classes don't meet on Fridays, and that gives us an opportunity to spend more of a longer weekend building relationships and shared experiences with each other in Beijing, also taking trips outside the city together. So I think there's definitely opportunities to engage where your academics are not all consuming. They're a significant part of the experience, and you get to learn a lot from the classes, but there's definitely a ton of flexibility in how you can use your time to engage, even if it's just within the Tsinghua campus with other clubs. You're not expected to take a leadership position in a club. You're not expected to organize events for the entire Tsinghua community. There's definitely people that enjoy that and that have done that in the past, because it's something that they derive energy from and love contributing to. But yeah, there's no obligation, but there is opportunity.
Awesome. Great. So there are so many amazing questions coming in, and I apologize that we're not going to be able to answer all of them during today's webinar, but at the end, I'll tell you about other ways you can engage. But Melanie's going to wrap us up with a question for our amazing panelists today.
Oh, great. One of the questions that I had asked you guys to think about is one of the questions we often do in our monthly reflections. So if any of you would like to share one of either your favorite experiences from the year, something that you'll always remember, or what's the best part about living and living and learning with this group of students that you've joined this year. Go ahead. Any order, just jump in.
Okay, I'm sure we're all really eager to hear, I'm eager to hear what these guys have to say, but I'm eager to share as well. So going back to what Joy was saying earlier about the sports day that we had at Tsinghua, so that was like our first weekend, and it's this big festival, and they needed, Schwarzman will really encourage, students to sign up, even if you don't have a background in sports, which I'm a runner, but not like a really sporty person. And so I convinced my friend Denola to sign up with me for this thing called the parachute run, which we just did not know what that meant. We just signed up because we were like, maybe we're in a parachute. And it turns out they strap a parachute to your back and you sprint like across this field with like 30 other people. And we had to like hold hands and we were strapped to this parachute together, and I just met this person like a week ago. And it was just we came in third place, I have to say, which I found ridiculously impressive because we didn't know what the sport was the morning we signed up. But it was just one of those moments where, you get that energy of Schwarzman of just like, go for it, like give it a try. And I think that's an incredible takeaway. And something I was reflecting on since not being in the college is I think I used to get a little bit nervous, like even in my old job when I'd be talking to people that are, high up in government or like CEOs, I used to feel more anxious, and even going into a room with people where I don't really know them. And after being for a year in Schwarzman College, being sort of immersed in high-powered other, folks from all over the world that were very diverse, as well as these kind of actually, high up people, I don't have the same kind of nerves. I feel much more confident in myself and just much more, like I've learned so much more about what I can give to the world, as corny as it sounds. Yeah.
I'll go ahead and jump in. So I think naturally, because my name is Joy, Christmas time or the holidays are like my absolute favorite. And so at that point, you can imagine, as much as I was really enjoying my time in Beijing and in the program, there was a sense of like slight homesickness because, you're not with your family during the holidays. And so the college made, and shout out to Sophie, who is our student events coordinator, because she really killed it. We had like a full month of festivities across the board, from Christmas related things. Sophie mentioned like there was a really nice like Hanukkah celebration. And so that Christmas week, we had like a Christmas gala, we had like a Christmas dinner, and all the staff and administration came, and we had like Christmas caroling, and there were like movies all month. And then Sophie, who's on our floor, I think fourth floor, we did it the best, but we decorated our floor with like Christmas trees and like little stockings. And it just, for me, that really just, it really made a world of a difference for, making a memory, but also just ameliorating that gap of homesickness, because it was late in the school year. We had exams, we had papers, but Christmas time was really, really an awesome experience.
Yeah, my memory is also related to the holidays. In the Hispanic world, there's a big tradition right after Christmas at the start of January called Three Kings Day. It's a big celebration, and we all gather together. And my family, we eat a specific type of sweetbread, which is very particular. It's hard to bake and it's hard to find outside of Latin America. So a couple days before the event, we hadn't really thought about, me and one of the other scholars from Mexico, we hadn't thought about if it was even a possibility to celebrate it, because how would we get this very particular sort of bread? But then we had an idea, and we started calling all the Mexican restaurants in town to see if they had like a baker that would be able to bake it for us. And eventually we got put in touch with a bakery that was not even in Beijing. It was in Suzhou, all the way down south near Shanghai. And we sent a WeChat message to the owner of this bakery. And we were like, hey, we're thinking about having this celebration in 2 days. Would you be able to, do you make this type of bread? And she's like, sure, I can bake you some loaves right now and send it to you tomorrow. And so she sent us these 2 huge loaves of this very beautiful sweetbread that we were then able to share. And I had ordered a little Christmas tree on Taobao, and it came the day before the celebration, so I set it up. And it was just a really wonderful way to share a little part of my culture and a little part of something that was really special to me and my family, but to be able to do that in the broader Schwarzman community. So I really enjoyed that, and I think it's something that'll stay with me for the rest of the time.
And my favorite memory is also related to holiday. It's during October holiday, I was traveling with a group of 5 scholars, one from China, one from Brazil, one from Pakistan, one from America, and another from Brazil in Tsinghua. And someone said that the best way to bond is through traveling, and I really felt that. So it was quite early on in the program, and I didn't know other scholars very well, but I wanted to go to this place in China called Dunhuang in the northwestern part, which is famous for the paintings on the wall, the ancient paintings from dating back to Tang Song dynasty. And I just basically asked around and said, like, I want to explore this beautiful painting place. Anyone will be interested. To my surprise, like they were actually interested, and was a quick organized trip, and we just went there, traveled, and there was some problems coming up, and like we were not able to hire a car, things like that. And initially, I didn't, from a Chinese perspective, I didn't really realize there were people had dietary requirements and religious requirements, and but like my friends they were really magnanimous, and like once we talk about these issues and they got solved, and they were really excited to learn more about China, about Chinese culture, and I was also very excited to share with them through this experience. We had a really beautiful memory and feel super close to them. And also just to those of you who are not like native Chinese, like as long as you show an interest and just want to learn about China in general, people generally are very nice, and they wouldn't really complain about your poor level of Chinese, but instead they would try to help you and to show you more about China. So yeah, excited about your experience in China as well.
Well, thank you all for sharing. It's I love hearing all of your favorite moments. I miss all of you. Some of my favorite moments are like making grilled cheese sandwiches and soup with all of you, and Carlos playing the ukulele at the top of one of the Great Wall turrets when we were on one of our hikes, and Joy doing pull-ups in the dark on the Tsinghua campus during one of our workouts. It's so wonderful. I'm so thankful that you joined us for this webinar today and shared some of your experience, and I hope hearing some of your stories about what it's really like to be a student in the program is useful to the folks who are on the line listening. So thank you all. And then back over to you, Wyatt.
Thanks so much, Melanie, and a big thanks to you, Melanie, and all of you for joining us today. So just to echo what Melanie said, so incredible to be here about your experiences, and I know it was just a special treat for everyone who joined us, for all of our 100+ attendees who were joining us today for today's webinar. As we wrap up, I just want to remind you of a couple of upcoming opportunities to continue to engage with Schwarzman scholars and the upcoming admissions process. For virtual information sessions where you can hear more about the Schwarzman Scholars experience and about our application and selection process. We have a variety of virtual information sessions coming up. You can find out about those on our website, and a reminder, you can to click on webinars and information sessions on schwarzmanscholars.org. If you are a Chinese passport holder from Chinese mainland, Macau, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, our application is open and closing at the end of May, and we have a lot of upcoming info sessions available. If you are not a passport holder from China and somewhere else around the world in our US global process, our application will open on April 15th, as I mentioned, and will close on September 22nd. We also have lots of upcoming virtual info sessions on the US global side as well. We also have, this is the first installment of our featured spotlight series. Next week, we'll continue with the academic experience at Schwarzman College, which I saw a lot of you ask some great questions about the academics. We'll talk about career development the next week, the power of the Schwarzman Scholars Alumni Network, which is really the entire point of the program, as we continue to build this network of global leaders. And on April 29th, we'll talk more about the incredible co-curricular program that you're programming at the college that you heard a little bit about today. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again to our panelists. We hope you have a great rest of the day wherever you are in the world. Stay well and stay safe, and we look forward to engaging with you sometime soon. Take care.
Thank you so much, Melanie and Wyatt.
Thanks,
So nice
everyone.
Miss y'all.
So good to see y'all.
Thanks, you guys.